Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome to my MERN Stack e-commerce course. So I just want to take a couple minutes and kind of let you know what this course is about, what's required, and so on. So this is a single project course. It's one large project, probably the largest that I've done in a course, and it's going to be an e-commerce platform with a full-fledged, shopping cart checkout system. We'll integrate the PayPal API so we can pay with PayPal or credit or debit card. We'll have a product review and rating system. Customers will be able to, view all their orders. We'll have an admin area where you can manage your users, your products, your orders, and so on. Now, as far as what you need to know to take this course, I would say at least the basics of React. You definitely don't have to be a pro, as long as you know what a component is, what state is, what props are, just the very basics. If you've a crash course or two, that should be enough. And as far as the back end using Node and Express, you don't really have to have much experience, but if you can build a simple REST API, that's fine. No, you don't have to know JSON Web Tokens or anything like that, because we're going to go through all that in this course. All right, so again, this is project-based. It's not a video documentation type course. So if you like to jump in and get your hands dirty and actually build something that you can, in the end, you can put on your portfolio, then I think you're going to like this course. So in the next video, I want to jump in and show you a demo of the Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome to my MERN Stack e-commerce course. So I just want to take a couple minutes and kind of let you know what this course is about, what's required, and so on. So this is a single project course. It's one large project, probably the largest that I've done in a course, and it's going to be an e-commerce platform with a full-fledged, shopping cart checkout system. We'll integrate the PayPal API so we can PayPal or credit or debit card. We'll have a product review and rating system. Customers will be able to, view all their orders. We'll have an admin area where you can manage your users, your products, your orders, and so on. Now, as far as what you need to know to take this course, I would say at least the basics of React. You definitely don't have to be a pro, as long as you know component is, what state is, what props are, just the very basics. If you've watched a crash course or two, that should be enough. And as far as the back end using Node and Express, you don't really have to have much experience, but if you can build a simple REST API, that's fine. You don't have to know JSON Web Tokens or anything like that, because we're going to go through all that in this course. All right, so again, this is project-based. It's not a video documentation type course. So if you like to jump in and get your hands dirty and actually build something that you can, in the end, customize, you can portfolio, then I think you're going to like this course. So in the next video, I want to jump in and show you a demo of the exact project. All right, so I just want to give you guys an overview of what we'll be building in this course. So we're going to build this from absolute scratch. We're going to deploy it to Heroku, and I'm going to leave the Redux dev tools open so you can see the actions that are fired off, and you can see the state diff and all that stuff. And if you don't understand this, don't worry about it. We're going to get to Redux later. So on the home page here, we have our nav bar. We can search products. We have a cart link to our shopping cart. We have a sign in, register page. And right here, we have a carousel where we're showing the top rated products. And we can click on one of these. It takes us to the product page. And then down here, we have the latest products, and we have 6 total in the database. Now, if we have more than 10, then we're going to show our pagination links down here. You can see in our state we get the products. We also get the number of pages, which is 1, and the page, which is 1. So if pages is more than 1, it'll show the links down here to go to the next page. So let's click on one of these and take a look at the product page. We have an image, title, description. We have the overall rating, so the average rating, the quantity, which pertains to the count in stock. So if we look at this in the state here, count in stock for this product is 3, so we get an option of 3. And then down here we have our reviews, and if you're logged in, you can see a form here to write a review. Of course, you can only write 1 review per product. So I'm just going to pretend like I just came to the site and I'm going to buy this. So I'll add this to my cart. Immediately it shows it in my shop. This is actually stock, so this is disabled. We can't edit. So I'll grab this mouse right here, the cart. If I just within this, actually update over here the number of items and the price. And of course, cart storage, so we can leave the page. We can even close the browser and come back, and the product will be proceed to checkout. And this is as far as we can go without John's account, and it'll take me right to the page. This up here, so sign in, shipping, payment, and this order. So whatever in here, and the shipping address will also get saved to local storage, so that if you come back, it'll be here. So continue. We're going to implement the PayPal API. You can also use a debit or credit card, and the way we're going to build it, it's going to be scalable to other payment methods if you want. Stripe. In fact, if I click continue, you'll see over here it calls cart save pay method and pay method PayPal. So you could easily, swap that out for Stripe to implement Stripe's API. Basically a summary of everything. So our item, payment, shipping address, the price including shipping and taxes. So we'll place order, and what that did is it put in order database, but it's set to not be. It's going to be paid, and that's set to false until we actually pay. Same thing with delivered. We can set this to delivered as well. So pay and PayPal, you can also use a credit card, and we're going to set up a fake sandbox account that we can use. So you can see sandbox.paypal. So we're not dealing with actual money right now. And automatically is my fake John Doe account, and these fake accounts. So I'll click, and then once it processes, this will reload. Now you'll be on date. And if we look at our order over here, is paid is now set to true. Payment result we're storing in the database. This is actually information from PayPal, including like the PayPal email ID, stuff like that. So now this has been paid. So if I go up here and view my profile, I can see that profile. I can see where it's paid. I can see it's or set out for delivered, and I can view the details as well. And then over here I can edit it if I want. Okay, so we can also leave reviews, and we can only leave one review. You can go left. So if I try to put something in, it's going to tell me that I already reviewed this product. Okay, now I'm going to log out here and log back in as an admin. And when you're an admin, you get this additional drop-down item, and we can see all of our users here. So admin and Jane Doe, which are customers, and I could set them to admin if I wanted to, and then they would be able to, have this functionality. We can see all the products, and I'll show you how to add a product in a second. But here we get the order that John Doe placed. If I go to details, as long as I'm an admin, I'll see it, and if I click that, it's going to update the database, and you can see is delivered, and then delete whatever the date and time is. So now the user can enter the order page and see that it's been delivered or set for delivered. And let's see, so products, let's go ahead and create a product. So as soon as I click this, it's going to create it and bring the page with some sample data. I can then add in here, I'll just say, and for the price 10, and stock, you can either manually put a link in here to an image, a URL to an image, you can just upload. So I'll just grab this Chrome logo, so that gets uploaded, and then we click update, and there's our test product. And if there's more than 10, it'll also have pagination here as well, as you can use the same product list state. So if we go back to the front page and go down to the test product, and we have that product we can add to the cart, we can now purchase. So we can obviously delete them or edit them. We can X that out, and now it's gone. And also repeat that and narrow it down to if I clear this out and click search, it just takes us to the home page. So there's actually quite a bit of functionality here. I mean, it's no eBay, but we're building this from the ground up. We're not using, WooCommerce or something like Create React and custom code from there. No copying, pasting, or we have some just sample products, some sample data that will load. We're going to build a database with users, but that's about it. Everything else is hand coded, and you're going to learn a lot in this course. Even if you already know React and you know the MERN Stack, I think you'll still have fun building this out. So let's go ahead and get started. So in this video, I just want to go over my environment, my text editor, some of the extensions I'll be using, and also some of the resources for this course. And if I find my GitHub account, Brad Traversy, and it's ProShop MERN. So you come here and see all the files for this project. Git commit after every video. There were a couple times where I forgot there were videos worth of code in some of these commits, but for the most part, they match a video. So for instance, we created the reduction. So if you wanted to see the exact code that was added, you can come here and you could see what was added or what was removed. So that should be helpful if you're uploading code. So I'm using Visual Studio Code for my text edit. Chances are a lot of you are using this. It's very popular in the web dev community, and I would recommend it, but if you want some or some kind of IDE, anything you're used to, that's absolutely fine. You don't have to use VS Code. It's just what used, and of course it's cross-platform. Next, you need to have OS installed on your machine. If you don't, just go to Node, and I would suggest version. We're actually going to be backend, which is the import syntax. So it's the same front end with React. After version, I believe it was 14.s, you don't have to add the experimental module. Suggesting 0.6, but if you grab current version, that is. So the next installed is the Git version control system. I would suggest making commits throughout the course. It doesn't have to be after every video, but whenever you feel you see fit, will be used at the end to deploy Heroku. So you can download it at git-sem, or you can install it with Homebrew on a Mac. There's other ways to install on Linux and stuff. So Postman is an API tool, HTTP client that we're going to use to backend routes before we actually integrate them into our front end. So you can download this at postman.com. And then I also want to just give a shout out to my partner on this course, Basir. So he had a huge in the project this course, and he's actually going to be covering the Q&A section on Udemy. If you have a question, if you run into some issues and you leave a message in the Q&A, either Basir or myself will get back to you, and he's more than capable of handling the Q&A. He specializes in eCommerce with React and Redux and Express. He has a YouTube channel at Coding with Scribe. All right, so let's jump into VS Code, and I just want to kind of go over the extensions and the settings that you want to follow along to a T, and you don't want to run into any issues, match up or something's happening with my screen that's not happening. Extensions, nothing spectacular. I'm using this ES7 React Native snippets, and basically I just use this to quickly generate. So we have shortcuts for lots of different things, imports, exports. Much for that though. I basically just use it for the for these here. So to generate, like if you want a class component, you can do RCC. What we'll be using for the most part is the React arrow function right here, RAFC. So React component export. I like to use this syntax for my components. All right, so that bracket pair colorizer is something I'd recommend, but definitely isn't needed. This kind of organizes things visually because it colorizes your curly braces, your brackets, your parentheses, and to make things nice and neat. And you can see, what the braces are purple, the nested ones in here are blue. So I've used that for years. So this works with HTML and JSX in React. Basically, it's going to change the ending tag as well automatically. So you'll see that happen. That's why. And I would suggest adding this to VS Code. What else? Using the JavaScript ES6 code snippets. I don't use this too much. Basically, for just do CLG enter, and it will print out console log. Not something that I do use. And then lastly, I have Prettier installed. A code. Now, as far as like ESLint and setting up linting, I'm not do that. I just want to keep everything kind of bare bones, but I do use Prettier to actually remove semicolons. I don't use it to delete them if I accidentally put one in, can be around as well. Also for single quotes, and I'll show you pretty in a sec, but I do use that. So now I'm just going to go to settings here, and one thing I do use is save on format. So if we search, or I said that backwards, format on save. So you'll see I have this checked, and basically what that means is if I file here. So if I have this like over here and it's not formatted nicely, when I save, it automatically puts it back. Also, I'm not using semicolons. If I have save, it just gets rid of it. If I have double quotes, so if I choose to use quotes here and save, it automatically changes it to single. I have configured is in settings, and then if we search, so my setup is not too crazy. I just have JSX single quote checked, and I have checked, and I have single quote with them. And if we take a look at my SLP and settings and open the JSON file here, this is just all my settings. My font size is obviously beefed up so you guys can see it. The terminal font size, prettier single quote set to true, so nothing crazy. I know some people have these insane VS configurations, but I don't do that because I do a lot of videos and courses, so I try to think about, but still using the rules. That's pretty much it for my setup. What you want, we'll use semicolons. So in the next video, we'll jump right in and get. Okay, so we're going to get started on our application, and in the first few videos I realized that you are probably going to know a lot of this stuff because I'm going to talk about the basics. We're just going to create React setup, so just bear with me. I do want to just explain this stuff for people that are newer to React. The first thing we want to do is generate basically a boilerplate of a React application that includes the library, it includes the initial files and folders to run just a simple boilerplate application. And one of the easiest ways to do that is with create React app. And this is just the React docs, and this is the page for creating a new React application. Now I'm going to go down here, so we can either install create React app with npm, we can install it globally on our system and then run it, or we can just use the npx command, which will simply run create React app without installing it on our system. So that's what we're going to do. Now I'm going to create a new folder for our project. I'm going to put it on my desktop, but you can put it anywhere. And I'm going to call it Pro Shop. And I'm going to open it with VS Code. So on a Mac, I can just drag it down to my VS Code icon. On Windows, you can just right click and say Open with Code. Now I have an empty folder here. I'm going to open up my integrated terminal with Control tilde. You can toggle it. And you don't have to use this. If you want to use your standard Mac or Windows or Linux terminal, you can. But from here, I'm going to say npx create-react-app, and I want to generate my React application into a folder called front end, because that's what this is. It's the client, it's the front end, the UI part of our application. Later on, when we start to deal with Node and Express and dealing with our database, that's all going to go in a folder called backend, and we're going to get to that in a little bit. Okay, so now create React app is done, and it created inside our front end folder here all the initial React files and folders that we need. So I'm going to actually cd into that front end folder, and from here I'm going to run npm start, and that's going to run our front end dev server, or our React dev server. And all this is going to display is a simple landing page. It might look a little different depending on when you're watching this. Sometimes they change it up a little, but it should be something like this. Now, while that's running, I just want to take a look at some of these file folders. So if we look in the package.json here, this has all of our dependencies that we're using, including React itself, React DOM, which is the library that's used for React to work with the document object model in the browser. React scripts includes the dev server that we're running and some other stuff. Down here we have our npm scripts, such as start, which we just ran. So we ran npm start, which starts up your dev server on localhost 3000 by default. We have build, so if we run npm build, or I'm sorry, npm run build, it's going to build up all of our static assets for deployment. So we'll be doing this much later when we're ready to deploy. We can also run tests. You can see that there's a testing library, but we're not going to deal with that in this course. And eject if you want to eject from Create React App and customize your Webpack and stuff like that. So let's go into public and into index.html. And I just want to kind of explain a little bit how React works and what it's doing under the hood. I know that a lot of you guys already know this. Just for the ones that don't, React is what's called a single page application framework. It's used to create single page applications. And what I mean by that is the browser initially reads this single index HTML. And if you notice, in this HTML, there's not much. There's just div with the ID of root. Now, if we go into the source folder, index.js is the entry point here where it brings in React, it brings in React DOM. Now, React DOM has a method called render where it takes our main app component, which is in app.js, we're importing it right here, and it puts it into whatever we put here, which in this case is the element with the ID of root. Okay, so this is just vanilla JavaScript document.get element by ID, and it's selecting this div with the ID of root. I could change this to something else like app, but I would have to change this as well. So it's just replacing that element with our main app component. Now, every custom component that we create, we're going to put into that app.js, that main app component, and it could be directly, it could be through routes, but everything's going to go in there, and then that replaces that div in that single page in that HTML. So in a nutshell, that's how React works. There's more to it, but I just wanted to kind of give you the gist of it. I like to just do a little custom and cleanup before we get started. So in this index.html, we're not going to do much. We just want to get rid of these comments here because we don't need these. And then for the title, this title will be displayed all over the application regardless of the screen that we're on or the route that we're on. Later on in the course, we're going to use something called React Helmet to have custom page titles. But for now, let's just change this to something more descriptive. We'll just say welcome to ProShop. And you can change this as well, the meta description. We'll just say find the best products for the cheapest prices. You can put whatever you'd like. We'll save that. Now this is also bringing in a favicon, which is right here in the public folder. It's this React logo. I have a custom favicon that I'm going to bring in, and I'll add that to the project files for this section. You also find it in the main GitHub repository. And it's just a little shop icon. With those changes, if we go back to the browser and we reload or refresh, you'll see that we get welcome to ProShop, and we also have the little favicon. Now in the source folder, there's some files that we're not going to need. This logo, which is the big React spinning logo, we don't need that. We don't need setup test, app.test, and then there's two CSS files. I'm going to keep index and get rid of the app CSS. So these 4 files we can just scrap. And as soon as I do that, the server is going to, it's going to tell us that it's looking for logo SVG, but we just deleted it. And that's coming from app.js. So let's go into app.js, and you can import images, SVG, you can import CSS directly. Now, I just deleted both of these, so we don't want to import them. And this is our main app component, okay? And then we're using functional components. You can also have class-based components, but these days it's much more common to use functional components with hooks. Now, in this return here, this is everything that's going to be output. And this is everything we just saw on that little landing page, the logo and all that. And this is JSX, and it's very similar to HTML. There's a couple differences though. You can't use class as an attribute. You have to use class name. And again, I know most of you probably know this. And then also you can have JavaScript directly in JSX. You just have to have these curly braces, or I should say JavaScript expressions. So you can have a variable, you can have a conditional, a ternary. You could say if logo, then something else, display something else. Now I'm going to get rid of everything within this div. And it's important to know that when you return your output here, it has to be, everything has to be wrapped in a single element. It doesn't have to be a div, it can be anything, but it has to be a single element. You can't go down here and put in a div or an H1 or something like that. The return has to be one element, but you can have whatever you want at one element. Now in this case, we don't even need a div, so we can use an empty element, which is called a fragment. And then I'm just going to put in here an H1 for now and just say welcome to ProShop. And I'll go ahead and save that, and our server should fix because we're not trying to import stuff that isn't there. I also want to get rid of everything that's in the index CSS and save that. And now if we go back to our browser here, we should just see welcome to ProShop. As far as our functional components, because that's what we're using, you can use this syntax just like regular function, although I prefer to use arrow function, so I'm going to change this to arrow function like that, and that should give us the same result. Now I would highly recommend that you use Git to use version control so that you can track your progress. If you don't have Git installed, you can go to git-scm.com, or you can install it with Homebrew on a Mac or your package manager on Linux. But what I'm going to do is I'll just stop the server for now. So I'll do a Control-C here. And if I do an ls-a, so this will list all the folder contents, even the hidden files and folders. And notice there's a .git folder already here. I want to get rid of that. I don't want that Git repository. So to do that, we can do rm-rf.git, and that will delete it. Because I don't want my Git repository in the front end, I want it in the root of our project. Now there's also this git ignore file, which you can see right here, that's in our front end folder. I'm going to move this into the root. So we'll go ahead and click move, and now this should be in root like that. And what git ignore does is it allows you to describe any files or folders that you don't want pushed to your repository. For instance, you don't want your node modules folder pushed because that gets created when you just run npm install. Now I'm actually going to go ahead and just say node modules and then node_modules/, because we're going to have node modules in our root, which will be all of our server dependencies, and then we also have one in the front end. So any node modules folder should not be included. Another thing I want to add down here is .env, because later on we're going to have this .env file, which will be all of our environment variables, so our global variables, and we don't want to push that because that can contain sensitive information like our PayPal API key, our MongoDB UI. That's stuff you don't want in your repository. All right, so we'll close that. Now let's initialize Git. We want to do it in the root, so I'm going to cd ... out of the front end, and from here we'll say git init. So that initializes our repository. I'm going to add everything to the staging area. So add dot, that means add everything, and you can do git status and see what is actually in your staging area, so everything except for what we have in the git ignore. And then let's go ahead and say git commit, and then just add the -m flag because we just want to put a short comment here and say I'm just going to say React setup. All right, so that'll get pushed to our local repository. I would suggest making commits along the way. I'm going to try to do it after every video. You don't have to do that. You can do it whenever you'd like, but again, I would suggest using Git. And then towards the end, when we deploy to Heroku, we actually use Git to do that as well. So I'm going to cd back into front end here and run my npm start. Okay, so we should be all set to move on. In the next video, we're going to create the header, which is going to have the nav bar. We'll create the footer component and do a... Okay, so now we want to handle the remove from cart. So let's start off in, we already constant. I already did the cart remove item. So now in the cart reducer, we need to, first of all, bring in that constant. So let's say cart remove item. And let's go right above the default here, case cart remove item. Now, if we're removing this, then let's return whatever we have in state, and then as far as cart items goes, we want to filter out the one that we're removing. So let's do from state.cart items, let's call filter and say for each item we want to check to see if x.product, which is the ID, if that's not equal to the action.payload, then we're going to show it. So it's basically going to strip out whatever the ID that we remove is. So let's save that. So that one's pretty easy. And then we need an action. So let's go to cart actions. And here we want to add a remove from cart. We also want to bring in cart remove item. Okay, now let's create, let's say export const remove from cart. And that's going to get passed in an ID. And then here we want to pass in dispatch. So we can dispatch to our reducer, and then also get state, so we can get all of the items that are in our cart, so we can reset our local storage to whatever is in the cart minus what we removed from it. So let's dispatch here an object with the type of cart remove item, and then the payload for this is going to be the ID. And then after that, let's set storage dot set item, and it's going to be cart items. And then we want to JSON dot stringify and pass in here get state, which gets our entire state tree, but we want from cart the cart items. All right, so we'll save that, and now where we want to call this is in our cart screen in the remove cart handler. So up here, let's bring in from cart actions, we want to bring in remove from cart, and let's go to our remove from cart handler. This gets passed in the ID. So what we'll do here is dispatch remove from cart and pass in the ID. All right. So let's check it out. So let's say I no longer want the PlayStation. I'm going to hit this, goes away. You can see it calls cart remove item, state diff. So it got rid of that in the state. Now if I reload, it should stay away because our local storage was updated as well. Okay, so even if we leave, come back, if we close the browser, it should stay away. It also updated the price too. Okay, so the next thing that we're going to want to work on is going to be the user authentication, because up to this point, there's nothing else that we really need to do other than some small stuff later on. We can't be where we don't have to be logged in. So if we proceed to checkout, it's going to take us to shipping, but we have to be logged in. So we need to handle that aspect of the application. Now we're going to have basically two separate sections. The next one is going to be the back end part of the login system. We'll be using Postman to test out the JSON web tokens and all that. And then we'll have another section where we actually create our sign in and register and add that to our state, have a user reducer and all that. So in the next video, we'll start on our back end